In the heart of the burning Wild West, one woman fights to protect the only thing left of her family, her land. But when a weary sheriff rides in from the dust with a past he can't escape, their fates collide in a storm of bullets, secrets and forbidden feelings. As the night turns to war and dawn brings blood, one question remains: will love survive when survival is all that's left? The desert wind carried the faint rattle of dry grass and the cry of a lonely hawk, circling high above. The sun was sinking, spilling gold and crimson across the empty plains, washing the land in the last light of day. Sheriff Cole Madden rode slow through the dust, his horse tired, its breath heavy. He could see her now, Clara Reeves, standing at the edge of her corral, her shadow long against the fading light. She was dressed in worn denim, her hair tied back, a streak of dirt across her cheek. She didn't move when she saw him coming. She just stared, one hand resting on the fence post, the other clutching the brim of her hat. Cole pulled his horse to a stop a few paces away, the leather saddle creaking softly. For a long moment neither of them spoke. The silence stretched between them, heavy and old, filled with things both of them had left unsaid. Clara finally broke it. "I told you not to come here." "Sheriff," she said, her voice steady but low, the kind that carried both warning and weariness. "This land doesn't need saving." He dismounted slowly, boots hitting the dirt with a thud. "It's not the land I'm here for," he said, eyes never leaving hers. The wind picked up, stirring the dust around their boots. She frowned, crossing her arms. "Then what are you here for?" He looked around at the empty ranch, the broken fence rails, the tired horses, the lonely barn half swallowed by dusk. "You," he said simply. "You've been fighting too long alone." Her jaw tightened. "I don't need your pity." Cole stepped closer, close enough to see the faint tremor in her hands. "I don't pity you, Clara, I respect you, but respect won't stop what's coming." The rancher's eyes flicked toward the horizon, dark. Clouds were gathering far off, the kind that never brought rain, only trouble. She exhaled slowly, her shoulders sinking under a weight no one else could see. "You don't understand, Cole. This is my fight. My father built this land with his hands. I'm not about to let anyone take it away." Cole's expression softened, a trace of something vulnerable flickering behind his hardened sheriff's eyes. "Then maybe it's time someone stood beside you, not against you." She looked at him for a long moment, searching his face for something, maybe truth, maybe weakness, but all she found was resolve. The wind whispered between them, carrying the scent of dry sage and far-off rain. Finally, she turned away, picking up a rope from the fence. "You'd better head back before dark," she said, voice quieter now. "There's nothing out here worth dying for." Cole hesitated, hand on his holster, then tipped his hat. "Maybe to you," he said, "but some things are worth dying with someone for." Clara froze, her back still turned. The words hung in the air like smoke, drifting into the coming night. Neither of them moved, but the distance between them had already changed. The storm came without warning. The wind howled through the open fields, carrying sand and whispers of thunder. The old barn groaned under the weight of the night, its lanterns flickering against the rain that began to fall in hesitant drops. Inside, Clara Reeves worked in silence, her hands trembling as she ran them over the saddle she'd been mending for hours. The smell of leather and hay filled the air, mixing with the faint scent of smoke from the lantern flame. Her gloves were tossed aside on a wooden crate, her fingers raw, bruised, cut from days of work and weeks of sleepless nights. Every sound outside made her flinch, a loose board creaking, the distant whinny of a horse, the roll of thunder. She knew what it meant. The rustlers would return. They always did. And this time, they'd left their message clear, a bullet casing nailed to her gate. The initials BR scratched into it. Clara swallowed hard, fighting the rising ache in her chest. She picked up her rifle, checked the chamber, and leaned it against the wall within reach. She told herself she wasn't afraid. But her hands told a different story. They wouldn't stop shaking. The barn doors creaked open. Her heart leapt, rifle in hand, finger on the trigger. A tall silhouette stepped through the doorway, outlined by lightning. The rain behind him turned to mist, and the moment she recognized the figure, she exhaled sharply. "Cole," she whispered. He took off his hat, water dripping from the brim, his face half shadowed by the dim light. "You lock your doors worse than you mend fences," he said, his voice quiet but firm. She lowered the rifle, eyes narrowing. "You shouldn't be here." He stepped inside fully, shutting the door behind him as thunder rumbled across the plains. You said that last time, he replied, setting his hat on a beam and unbuckling his gun belt. Didn't stop me then either. Clara turned away, pretending to busy herself with the saddle again. I don't need saving, Sheriff. I didn't come to save you, he said softly. I came because I can't stand by and watch you drown in pride. She spun around, eyes burning. This isn't pride. This is survival. Cole met her gaze, calm and steady. Survival doesn't mean doing it alone. The air between them tightened, every second stretching like a drawn bowstring. Rain pounded harder against the roof, dripping through the cracks and splattering on the dirt floor. Clara stared at him, the way his shirt clung to his shoulders, soaked from the storm, his eyes dark with something she didn't want to name. You think you can just ride in and fix things? She asked. No, he said, taking a slow step closer. I just want to help you fight. She shook her head, voice trembling now. You'll get yourself killed. He took another step, close enough now that she could feel the warmth of his breath. Easy now, he murmured, his voice lower, gentler. You've been fighting ghosts too long, Clara. Let someone fight beside you. Her throat tightened. For a moment she wanted to yell, to push him away, but instead, she just stood there, unable to move. Lightning flashed through the cracks, painting their faces in white and gold. The storm raged outside, but inside that barn the world fell still. Cole reached out slowly, brushing a strand of wet hair from her face. His touch was rough, but careful, like a man afraid the smallest move might shatter everything. Clara didn't pull away. I don't know how to let anyone in anymore, she whispered. He nodded, his voice barely above the rain. Then I'll wait on the other side of the door until you do. For a long while they said nothing. Only the sound of rain filled the silence, steady, relentless, like the beating of two hearts that had finally found the same rhythm. Outside, thunder rolled again. The storm had arrived. First light of dawn bled slowly across the horizon, turning the plains into a sea of red and gold. The storm had passed, leaving the land heavy with silence, the kind that comes before blood. Clara stood on the porch of her ranch house, her rifle slung over her shoulder, eyes fixed on the distant ridge. The wind carried the faint echo of hooves, too many to count. She didn't need to. She knew who they were. Cole stepped up beside her, adjusting the strap of his revolver belt. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp, scanning the line of the hills. They're early, he said quietly. They always are, Clara answered. Her voice steady, though her heart was a hammer in her chest. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The morning light caught the dust rising from the ridge, a dark cloud growing larger, closer. Clara exhaled slowly and reached for her father's rifle. My father would have told me to hide in the cellar, she said with a bitter smile. Cole shook his head, tightening the glove on his hand. Your father would have stood right here beside you. She looked at him then, really looked. The way the wind brushed through his hair, the small scar near his jaw, the quiet strength in his stance. For a fleeting second, fear left her. The first gunshot split the dawn. Cole drew fast, the revolver flashing in his hand as the rustlers charged down the hill. A dozen men, shouting, firing wildly. Clara took her position by the corral fence, her rifle braced, eyes locked on the first rider. She fired once, clean through the man's shoulder, and he toppled from his horse. Another came, and she didn't flinch. Cole moved beside her like a shadow, each shot precise, controlled. They moved as if they'd trained together for years, covering each other's blind spots, every heartbeat echoing the other's rhythm. The air filled with gunfire and dust, horses screaming, bullets snapping against wood. Clara reloaded fast, her fingers raw, her breath quick. One of the rustlers flanked around the barn, aiming straight for Cole. She shouted his name, firing before she could think. The man fell, smoke rising from her barrel. Cole turned, meeting her eyes for just a heartbeat. Nice shot, he called. She didn't answer, just nodded, teeth clenched. The fight dragged on, the sun climbing higher, painting the world in smoke and gold. One by one the rustlers began to fall or flee. The last man, broad and scarred, rode straight for Clara, gun blazing. Cole moved without thought, stepping in front of her, taking the hit across his shoulder as he fired back. The rustler's horse screamed, reared, and the man crashed into the dust. The silence that followed was deafening. Clara rushed to Cole, catching him before he stumbled. Blood seeped through his shirt, but his grin was still there, tired, crooked, alive. Told you I wasn't here for the land, he said, voice hoarse but steady. She pressed her hand to his wound, shaking her head. "You're a fool, Cole Madden." "Yeah," he breathed, looking at her through the haze of pain and sunlight. "But I'm your fool now." Her eyes burned, and for once she didn't hide it. She tore a strip from her sleeve, wrapped it around his shoulder, and for the first time in years, allowed herself to breathe. Around them, the ranch was quiet again. The land saved, the ghosts gone. Cole looked out at the horizon, where smoke still lingered and light broke through the clouds. "You've got a lot of rebuilding to do," he murmured. She smiled faintly, brushing dirt from his cheek. "Then I guess you'd better stick around." He chuckled, low and rough. Wasn't planning on leaving. The wind swept through the open field, carrying the scent of dust, smoke, and something new, hope. Clara leaned her head against his shoulder, the rising sun painting them both in gold. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't standing alone, and in the quiet of that morning, the Wild West didn't feel so wild anymore.